All right, I thought I would start with this because it's kind of a little bit of a view of what the future is going to be like with SAP. So, really quick video. How many folks still have ECC, by the way? Does it look like that? No, the future's getting kind of exciting, no doubt about it. So today, I'm actually not going to talk a lot about SAP's version of Business AI. Artem, stand up for a second. Artem's up next after me. He's got a breakout session. He's going to talk all about Business AI. But today, I'm going to try to cover the basics. How many people in the room feel that they're truly experts on Gen AI? Is there one? Okay. Artem put his hand up. You're not allowed to heckle. But that's my topic. I'm going to kind of level set on where we are with Gen AI as an industry. And then Artem's going to talk a lot more about what SAP is doing with Gen AI. And, quick disclaimer, I'm going to talk a little bit about the future. And whenever you talk about the future, there's things that may not come out. So SAP's basic disclaimer is, this is what we're working on, but not everything's going to necessarily see the light of day. And so today, I'm going to do a really quick recap on BTP. How many of you guys were here last year when I was talking about BTP? Not going to repeat myself very much, but I'm going to do a little bit of reminder. But okay, a baseline understanding of Gen AI, and then just a really short introduction into Artem's session. And so first and foremost, Dallas's favorite NBA previous owner, Mark Cuban, is pretty famous for this. He talks about it all the time. He talks about the fact that change is constant and it's accelerating, and there's no doubt that every one of the competitors that you have is changing very quickly too. And so what we've talked about BTP in the past, the reason BTP exists is to help you adapt to change. So this is very appropriate. But by the way, I have a smart cam that's hidden in each one of your headquarters right now. And it's recording a live stream because this is happening back at your office while you guys are here eating the food on a Friday in Plano. And what is that? A short-term decision is being made, and this is a problem. There's a real problem because in businesses, there's always a short-term problem that needs a short-term solution, and everybody's in a hurry to get it done by a certain deadline. And as a result, short-termism is a problem that all of us face. The trucking department wants a new app. They go out and buy the app, they throw it over the wall to IT, they say, hey IT, can you make this work with the rest of the stuff? And so what does IT do? Yeah, sure, we'll do that. But you do it over and over and over again, and the ugly result is that you have to keep gluing it onto this incredibly painful model that's turning into your landscape. And so you're using bubble gum and duct tape and bungee cord and everything else to make things work well together. The result is that you get a chart that looks like this. How many people have a chart that looks a little bit like this? Nobody admits it. Wow. We're covering up the problem. Well, we have one person. Okay. But yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult after you've taken 600 apps and made them part of your landscape. It is really, really hard to make everything work well together. But that future, the AI little video that I just showed, is showing everything working well together. So we have to get to that point. So quick question for you. I think I used this last year, so some people are going to get a little bit. Let's see if you remember. How many on-premises apps does the average Fortune 500 company have today? Anyone? How much? 300. Higher than 300. The answer is 484. Survey says 484 apps running the average Fortune 500 company on premise. And the promise of SaaS is, oh, SaaS is going to save us, but SaaS is growing quickly. Last year, when I had this chart and I was showing you guys, it was just over 100. Now this year's survey says it's over 200. So we're adding more SaaS apps while we're not discontinuing those on-premises apps fast enough. And if you do a merger, good luck. It just got twice as complicated because that company you just bought is showing up with the exact same chart, different version, and you have to make all that work together. That's an exponential problem. And so the spoiler alert for BTP, the one thing to remember is that it's not the oldest, most established companies that survive and thrive. You guys have probably seen those surveys about how fast do companies fall out of the S&P 500, right? But we invented BTP for this reason. It exists to help make you a much more adaptable, much more nimble company. And the way you do that is through creating a modular architecture that helps integrate everything together with pre-built content, so you don't have to maintain that yourself. You have to become more real-time, you have to become more data-driven, and above everything else, and you've heard it over and over and over, how do I keep a clean core? How do I stop doing the modifications in my core software and innovate at the edge? The one word that I think wasn't emphasized enough, how many guys went to Sapphire last year? Quite a few. At Sapphire, we talked a lot about future-proofing. Future-proofing sounded like a marketing term, I think, when you went to Sapphire, but the truth is this is the most important thing to think about as you work on your next project. Is this going to be changes that stand the test of time? Are they going to help us become more real-time? Are they going to help us become more data-driven? Is it going to be done in a modular way so that it'll continue to work for us? And so I travel the country, I talk to a lot of audiences, I talk to a lot of C-level executives, and I ask them, what are the top problems that you're working on? And so this is my own little personal survey from all these conversations. You know, the topics that come up are actually kind of hard to solve. How do we reduce costs? How do we grow our revenue and our customer experience without growing those costs on a similar slope? How do we make better decisions? How do we optimize our pricing? And I'd ask you guys, are these in your top 10 goals? Everybody agree? A little bit of nod? Yeah, a lot of people are nodding. These tend to land on the list. So, but if you look at these, there's core problems that are the same across the board that can be solved with a platform. How do we get rid of all that paper? How do we make the data work well together in a data fabric? You know, how do we eliminate departmental silos? How do we actually apply AI, which is now the trend of the day? How do we make AI make our business process run better? If you look at these problems, there's lots of things, it's kind of faded out. I don't know if you guys can see it, but across the bottom, those are the main things that BTP does. And if you start looking at these problems, you quickly discover that a lot of them are answered by a platform that takes care of your data, a platform that takes care of the integration, a platform that helps you apply AI. And so the whole trick here is how do we embrace the complexity that we've all grown into and become more agile as we go to this faster moving world. Complexity is what's actually slowing down our development. It's what's causing those silos to remain in place. It's what's causing us to not be able to embrace data across the board. And so my simplest version of BTP, it comes down to this. It's all about how do you integrate better, how do you apply these technologies so that you can transition from where we are today. Remember, today we've got roughly 500 on-premises apps, 200 or so SaaS apps. We want to simplify what we do in each one of these areas, reuse the technology for more than one use case so that we can enable modularity and that we can go fast with pre-built content. We also want to abstract our customers, our associates, our partners from that complexity that's happening behind the scenes. At the same time, we want to optimize our business processes. And so what does the future hold? If you look at the right side of the chart, we know what the future holds. It's going to be a lot more SaaS in the cloud across multiple clouds that works with a lot less stuff that's on-premise, but on-premise isn't going away tomorrow. Does anybody in the audience believe that they're going to be 100% in one cloud anytime soon? No, not at all. It's a very hybrid kind of chart. So that's your quick recap on why BTP is important, and of course, it helps you adapt to change, and one of those big changes right now is what we're going to do with AI. But if you want to watch and kind of get a reminder of why BTP, just go to whybtp.com. I got lucky. I was at Insider a few weeks ago and they managed to record it. So I have a 45-minute video that's a full brief on why BTP, and you're welcome to watch that online. But today we're going to talk a lot about giving you a basic understanding of Gen AI, because I think all of us are kind of like on a surfboard. A lot of stuff going on. It's changing constantly. How do we kind of understand that and have a good conversation? So if you look at this hype cycle from Gartner, the very top dot on this chart, I know it's hard to read, is Gen AI. We're at the top of the hype. And I think all of us in the room that work at any standard company are kind of worried about this. Like, can we trust it to make great decisions and produce great quality work for us? But at the same time, we also have the fear of missing out. So we're balancing trust versus FOMO, knowing it's an important technology, but we don't know exactly how we're going to apply it. But there's no doubt in my mind that Gen AI has changed the game for IT. Everybody, how many people are in IT? A lot of us. And for the last, 10 years, what did we hear? I want you to do more with less. I'm going to cut your budget. I mean, that's kind of what we've been fighting for the 2010s. And today, executives are realizing, as Wall Street asks some questions about their AI plan, but they're realizing that there's an amazing potential here, but they have to invest in it. So it's definitely changed the wind in our favor. And so to get there, let's get a base camp. Before you climb Mount Everest, you want to have a base camp. And so we're going to talk about Gen AI capabilities in general. So what can Gen AI do for you? I'm assuming everybody's played with ChatGPT a bit. Is that a fair statement? Yes. Especially the students in the room that wanted to get help writing their papers. Isn't that right? Anyway. So you can do all kinds of cool stuff with ChatGPT. You can ask a question like this. Write a limerick about ASUG members and how they bring value to their organizations. And ChatGPT will come back with something pretty cool. There once were ASUG members so bright who made processes run just right, with data they played and solutions they made, bringing value that shone like a light. Where's the value engineers in the room? It's a good thing. So kind of cool, but let's say you want something that might be slightly more useful in your organization. It can also write code. So if you want to write some Python code, it can absolutely generate that as well, because ChatGPT has gone out there and basically swallowed the internet whole, at least the text end of the internet for sure. And it can learn from GitHub or wherever else on how to write that code. No doubt about it. But it can also do some pretty cool stuff too. What if I asked it a prompt like this? Please give me a photograph of a big pile of laptops and Xboxes, some of them gift wrapped, in front of this building, the Plano Event Center. And I asked for a sunny day. I didn't realize it was going to be cloudy today. And I also didn't realize there was going to be a whole bunch of construction out front. But I could have included construction perhaps. It comes up with a cool picture like this. Now, it may not be the great quality that we're getting from our photographer friend that's taking headshots outside, but the whole point is pretty impressive. Gen AI can guess that next pixel with the best of them. And by the way, I'm just kidding. We don't have gifts outside because there's construction out there. That's the only reason you're not getting Xboxes today. So, okay. But it can also do amazing stuff too. So if you've been to Sora, which is from the OpenAI people, you can send in a prompt that looks something like this. A gorgeously rendered papercraft world of a coral reef rife with colorful fish and sea creatures. And you kind of get something that looks like this, which if you think about it, it's pretty darn amazing. If you had tried this query 9 months ago, it wouldn't look anything like this at all. So the power is amazing, and of course all of us are thinking, how's this going to reflect in the news when people start putting words in people's mouths and all that kind of stuff, and what can you trust? So there's always issues that surround trust, but it is kind of amazing. So if you take a step back and think about AI in general, deep learning, which is where Gen AI is part as a subset of this much bigger science that's been going on for 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years. The basic concepts were invented in the 1950s, so this isn't that new. But there's been breakthroughs on the way, and one innovation led to another innovation until we got to a great moment. And that great moment that's captured the world is kind of in this deep learning arena. And basically, we got through foundational models that you can now apply to multiple problems. We got the large language models, and we ultimately got the generative AI that can generate new material. That's kind of where the ChatGPTs, the Llamas, the Claudes of the world are. And so My first question of the day, by the way, this is for a t-shirt because I'm trying to be fun. Am I fun? I think I'm fun. Here's a t-shirt you can earn. Who wants to guess, I'm looking for a specific number, on how high the average large language model scores on an IQ test? What do you think? 98. 98. Who said 98? Did you read an article? Absolutely right. By the way, this is Scott Sleeper. If you guys know Scott, he's one of the most brilliant guys we have on HANA, and today he's playing Vanna White for me. So he's got the t-shirt. You got a choice, extra large, large, or medium. What do you want? Large. So here comes Vanna / Scott Sleeper, and it will get you that t-shirt. But yeah, absolutely. Large language models don't score as high as a lot of people think they will. So when we talk about taking over the entire world with what we have today, it's not exactly the situation. But if you think about models and training models, there's a pretty simple, aspect to this, where it all started. Now, granted, we've kind of taken it to a little bit more complicated level. But so I wanted to create a model, a very basic model, to try to come up with the SAP stock price. And if this worked, maybe I could retire quickly. And so the question was, how do I predict the stock price of SAP stock today? And I plotted the last 6 months of pricing, and it kind of came up with a trend and came up with a formula that reflects that trend. And so my formula says that if you substitute in the date, which is today, you can come up with a price. If you guys Google that price right now, I'm pretty sure I'm wrong because this model's not that good. It has 2 parameters, right? And if you think about parameters in general, what we're trying to do is reflect what's happening in the real world. And this little chart, by the way, is the interrelations and correlations of a stock market. And I don't think my 2 little parameters will actually get the job done. So if you think about language is even more complex than that. And so when we start building models for large language models and how humans communicate, it gets pretty crazy. Like GPT-3 has 175 billion with a B parameters, a little more sophisticated than my little stock thing. If you start talking about GPT-4, not published, but people are guessing it's about 1 trillion parameters. Claude 2 is even higher than that. It takes a lot of carbon output to get to one of these models, there's no doubt about it. But these things are very, very large, and the results start getting pretty magical when you have that many parameters. And so a question that I think people ask about is, how do these models get trained? And it's really a huge exercise of playing fill in the blank. You have a sentence, the model tries to predict what the words are going to be in that sentence, and if it makes a mistake, you try to correct the model. And so in this case, the sentence is, the firefighter sprayed blank on the blank. And if the model predicts spray gasoline on the fire, you then have to correct what it's doing. And you have to do this over and over and over. It's not an easy process until you get to the actual right result where you're actually spraying water on the burning house, or whatever the right answer is in this case. That's kind of how it's done. It's just done for the entire internet. Quite a large event. So we're really generating what's really the next word. I guess let me give you an example. It's kind of, if I actually say the sentence, once upon a time, that's how ChatGPT works. It's guessing the next word. And you guys, by the way, are just as smart as ChatGPT at this point. Everybody guessed the right word. Now, let's do this again. Once upon a time, there, by the way, is the most popular statistical answer. 40% of the time, there is the next word. Once upon a time, there, 100% of the time. So depending on the prompt, you get a specific answer, and the model doesn't change. The model was generated 2 years ago. If you give it the exact same prompt, you're going to get the exact same answer from the same GPT. Well, so in this case, let's say we want to create this one. Write a riddle about ASUG members is our prompt. That's the input to the model. The model comes back with a word to predict. So in this case, it's going to start with Y. You do it again. The way this works is GPT takes your previous input, write a riddle about ASUG members, it predicts one word, and it takes the entire thing it just predicted, puts it back into the model to predict the next word. So it's the input to the model. The next word that comes back is did. After that, it does it over and over again. So write a riddle about ASUG members. Why did the ASUG members cross? You guys kind of see where it's going. But that's exactly how this works. It takes your entire input, generates the next word, takes another input, generates the next word. So for example, GPT is not very good at writing jokes. Why is that? Babu, you know. All right, you got to know the end of the joke before you write the beginning of the joke, right? That's not how it works. It's predicting one word at a time. And so, the thing to remember is that GPT and all these large language models have no concept of the truth. They're predicting the next word, and that's why hallucinations happen. We've all heard about hallucinations. So you're kind of wondering what could go wrong. So here's a prompt that you send in for the students in the room. Where are the students? You guys back there somewhere? They're way at the back. Got to move up to the front. They've been trained by professors. Anyway, please provide a reference publication for IT education at a pre-college level. It comes back with something that looks like this. Looks pretty good. They turn it in. They have no idea that in truth, none of these names were right as far as authors of the book. They'd worked together. They'd appeared on the internet quite often together in the same arena. So of course, ChatGPT, when it's predicting the next word, picks more popular words than less popular words, or more popular last names that go with a specific topic. This is how you get an hallucination that is actually not accurate whatsoever. So let's take an SAP example. Please provide me all the tables and CDS views for getting details on contract accounts at SAP. ChatGPT comes back with popular sounding stuff. You might say, hey, that is really cool, until you realize that some of these tables and some of these CDS views never existed. They just happen to be in the same ballpark, and that's why hallucinations happen. And so, next question for a t-shirt. What does the T stand for in ChatGPT? Who said transformer in the middle? Carlos. Carlos wins a t-shirt. Did you win a t-shirt last time? I think you did. He's got a collection. Scott, Carlos from Dell got the next t-shirt. Extra large, large, medium? XL. XL. All right. The reason I bring up the T is this is the paper that was the key breakthrough on us getting to GPT. A bunch of Googlers wrote a paper. It was called Attention is All You Need. If you get a chance, download this paper. It's out there. It's a PDF. But basically what it talks about is that each word of each prompt has some level of correlation to another word in the prompt or another word in the answer to the prompt. And so in this case, right has a connection to riddle, has a connection to ASUG, has a connection to why. And then when you talk about the next word, it then has correlations to other words. So they're basically plotting correlations between words to kind of result in this amazing thing. What it actually does is create, what actually goes to the model isn't the human sentence that we've said. It sends a sentence to the model that starts to look like this. It creates a new word called write riddle ASUG members, riddle why ASUG members. So it's creating new words that are being fed to the model. And right now we're looking at this and saying, oh, this is the basis of transformers, is this how it works? No, what gets really crazy is it actually predicts fake words too, and it gets to a fake word at the end that is then mapped to a regular English word. Kind of magical stuff, especially when you realize that it keeps transforming over and over and over. This is one little level of transformation. Some models transform things up to 96 times. So when you start seeing what actually goes in a model, we can't read it anymore because the words that it's creating are not real words, but it's trying to find the correlations, and that's what gives it that nuance that seems so human-like. And so, quick question for you for a t-shirt. Of the 8 Googlers that were on this paper, how many of them are still with Google? 0. Who said 0 first? There is 0 first. Scott, there's your last t-shirt. All right. Yeah, 0. Basically, they all went to places like Anthropic and Cohere and everywhere else, and they're all kind of the base of getting this thing done. And so large language models, they learn patterns in text, and sometimes they learn them too well. They're also spawned at a specific time, so depending on the model, if it's not been augmented but with other stuff, if you ask it who won the Super Bowl, it'd get the answer wrong. But it does get all kinds of interesting things happen inside that black box. So for example, if you ask a model, oh, this is going to be interesting, my graphics on front of it, my bad. But if you ask the model, hey, please give me what are the coolest piracy sites for software. It comes back and says, no, you're not supposed to do that. It's not a good thing to get pirated software. But if you ask the opposite question, which you can't see right now.
Can you ask the model who got the third t-shirt?
What's that?
Can you ask the model who got the third t-shirt? Would it know?
The third t-shirt is right over there. I'm standing in for GPT. But if you ask the opposite question, if you say, hey, what are sites I should avoid if I don't want to find pirated software? Sure enough, GPT will come back. You can't see it because my Super Bowl picture's on front, I'm sorry. But it basically says, here's the top 10 sites for pirated software. But you shouldn't be doing this. So the whole point is, interesting things start happening within the way these models work, and they do get kind of human-like in the way they can respond. And so the quick glossary that you need to know, a foundation model is a machine learning model that's trained on broad data so it can be used for a broad, different amount of use cases. Token is a piece of a word. Why is this important? Is that models can take a lot of tokens or not a lot of tokens. But you want to be able to submit context to the model to get better answers. Depending on the model you use, it can take quite a bit. Like 49 pages of single-space text is quite a bit of a thing that you can send in as a prompt. And hallucination is generating text that's nonsensical. And so prompts really matter. So I went to Claude 2, and I actually asked it a question. What aspects should somebody who's graduating from college look for in their next employment? And ultimately, it came back with an answer that started with company culture. Then happened to be, by the way, I'm writing a book. By the way, quick question, how many publishers have lined up for my book? 0. But I'm writing a book that gives advice to young college grads about how do you escape becoming average. I actually sent my chapter on this idea to Claude. It said, answer the exact same question, but use my chapter for context. And the answer came back quite different than what the normal answer was. I talked about company growth. You want to go to a place that's really healthy is my first topic. So the whole point is that what you send to the model will absolutely change its answer, and you can make it more relevant. So from a Gen AI versus traditional AI use case perspective, Gen AI is good for very specific things like coding, things like summarizing, while traditional ML and AI is good for predicting and finding outliers and stuff like that. So I don't want to discount what it can do and how amazing it can be. Google did this experiment. They put up Gen AI versus traditional doctors in a chat. And they had 149 people chat their symptoms and try to figure this out. Mind-boggling that chat absolutely killed it versus the doctors, especially in empathy, which is just like, wow, kind of cool. So, and I don't want to discount the fact that this is amazing technology. It's how we use it that's going to be really, really important. Kind of a really cool quote from Boston Consulting Group, 20 billion in revenue, the size of your company, you can get an amazing amount of profitability out of that. So here's our problem. We're kind of holding the tesseract in our hand. Amazing power. Do we trust it? And do we have fear of missing out? So a really quick intro to business AI from SAP. How much time do I have left? Not much. Where are we? The answer is barely at the starting gate, no doubt about it. A few people have a productive use case out there. Not a lot of people are using it in a productive way yet. We've always been focused on business AI, and we started in 1995. This isn't brand new news to us. And what we're really focused on is how do we make it more relevant? How do we make it more reliable? How do we make it responsible for your business? And so how do you do that? You may have heard of RAG. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. But the idea is that you send an amazingly good prompt to the LLM. The LLM gives you something that sounds like human, right? So in this example, what's a good Chinese restaurant near the SAP office and can I walk there? And you basically create, using VectorDB, you create your own little mini Google. You feed it full of information. So you got the Chinese restaurants, their ratings, the knowledge base articles, everything else you may want. It then sends a prompt to the LLM that's something like this. Here's the weather, here's who's highly rated. The LLM then responds with something that sounds totally human. That's how you make things better. You use this idea to send an amazingly good prompt, kind of like when I sent my book chapter to get a better answer, right? Same basic idea. You know, another example would be if you want to generate content. Let's say you want to generate job descriptions. If you have your vector DB that contains your own tone of voice, your own professional aspects, your own all that stuff, you can then send a prompt that looks like this. You're an HR bot. Please respond this way in an optimistic tone, and it comes back and gives you something pretty cool. So it will work, and it'll do a lot of interesting things, but you kind of need this front end. And so you can also fine-tune a model. Remember, it takes a tremendous amount of energy and time to build these models. But in my case, I was trying to predict stock price. I could fine-tune that just a little bit and maybe get a little bit better of an answer. I don't know if anybody's looked up the stock price, but I'm probably off. But you get the basic idea. So we're going to deliver AI in 3 ways. We're going to help you with that natural AI user experience. We're going to help you with automation because everybody wants to become more efficient, and we're going to absolutely help you build things that create predictions and communicate those in a nice human voice. And so the 4 things I want you to remember, other than the go to Artem session, is that ChatGPT and large language models alone are not going to get the job done. They work for certain things like writing code really, really well. But there's a lot of things that's going to require combining business process knowledge and your specific customer data. You're also going to want to avoid mistakes. Nobody wants to be in the Wall Street Journal for missing earnings by 10 cents because they trusted the black box too much. And lastly, most companies I've ever worked with, they always want to keep their data private. And so you want to create a solution that does that, and SAP is dedicated to that. If you think about it, large language models are a lot like a brilliant English professor. Really great at conversation, really great at debate, but he was spawned 2 years ago and has no idea about what's happening in your business today. And so if you want to get a question answered like this, will Big E Corp pay their invoice on time? The process has to go through a lot more information than just a large language model to come back and say, yes, Big E Corp's got a 98% chance of paying its invoice on time. Or you might want to ask a question like, where are we on this delivery from Seattle? Once again, you need current data. You need to understand what's happening to be able to answer and say, no, you're running 48 hours behind. My last example, let's say you want to know if Spacely Sprockets is going to renew their maintenance contract. You'd love to find out that not only are they going to renew, they're probably going to buy more services. So now we can dispatch our sales force to go call on them and sign that additional deal. And so to have relevant, reliable, and responsible AI, you've got to have these additional components to get the job done, and you have to make sure that it's all done in a very ethical way. You don't want to deny somebody credit because there was a bias in the internet that was sucked in as part of that model. So here's the final slide. Really quick quiz for you guys. No t-shirts left, I'm sorry, but quick quiz. I want you guys to think through, will Gen AI or ML help in this case? So number 1, if you want to sort through purchase orders, invoices, and email communications, and then recommend the next course of action to service representatives, what do you think is the driving kind of AI behind that? It's Gen AI. It's got to understand the language and the nuances of the whole thing. If you want to forecast future sales, what do you guys think? Nobody's yelling this out. Machine learning, there's no doubt about it. If you want to generate an application that's based on natural language descriptions, call it coding. Yeah, absolutely, Gen AI. What about this one? Predicting a late delivery of a customer order and then automatically crafting an email. It's both. Yeah, combining the 2 things together. Last one. You want to detect anomalies in financial transactions. It is absolutely ML. Good shout out back there. I heard that one with authority. Yeah, so Artem's up next. He's part of track 2, starts at 1 o'clock. Thank you for your time.